Well, first of all, no, I did not watch that episode. I don't watch that product. So I didn't see it when it happened, and I wouldn't see if they did it again next week. Um, the First of all, nothing against the three kids that had done it, that were put in that position. But look, I can go out in my backyard and spend some time carving foreheads, and might look like, with my artistic skill, might look like four coconuts or four Vince McMahons. But in the overall scheme of things, I don't think I can call that Mount Rushmore. Um, there are certain things you do and don't do in our business. We'll keep it confined to our business. There is a reason you don't go out and, like the old song says, spit. You don't pull on Superman's cape. You don't spit into the wind. And the reason is for obvious reasons to most people. Maybe VKM is not most people. Maybe he's got a little screw loose and doesn't quite understand. Maybe he spits in the wind daily and gets it back in its face. If you go out and you say something derogatory about the Four Horsemen, and I brought that one up first with full intention because everybody knows my personal deals with Ric Flair. But the Four Horsemen are written in stone. You can try to change it. You can take a picture and alter it and Photoshop it if you want. But people remember the Four Horsemen as they were, as the symbol of excellence. As every time you say it, you still see Arn and Tully holding the four fingers up, right? You just don't do it because there's some things you don't touch. No country music star today goes out and calls themselves the man in black or the woman in black. Most people are intelligent enough to do that. And yet I think and before I go any further, let me just say thank you to all the fans that have been responding in that way. I haven't, as everybody has seen, I have not been on Twitter for the last week. I've been just extraordinarily busy with trying to get a bunch of personal things and just life straightened out before I take off to go to Australia, a trip I'm really looking forward to. So I haven't had a chance to get on and answer anybody personally, which I usually try to do on Twitter. But I think Vince probably got the earful back that he needed to from that. But since Vince seems to be stuck on some wrestler from ECW from 20 years ago, Vince, I'm sure you can find my phone number. If you want help with your ratings, give me a call. I'd be happy to sell them to you. Or you can continue in default and free fall like you are. If I were an investment group, like say Merrill Lynch or Charles Schwab, I would think twice in wanting to invest in a company that wanted to invoke something from 20 years ago in such a derogatory way and shit on so many fans as VKM did last week and got his earful back for it. But maybe there will be something for them to invest in the very near future that may be a better and more worthwhile investment.
It's just crazy to look. I'm still reading some of these as you're talking, and I didn't read a couple of them, but the general consensus is it's an insult. It's crapping on the legacy of what you guys laid the foundation of in ECW. To use a name like the Triple Threat, go ahead.
Look, I don't want to cut you off, but the fact that when people say the Triple Threat, in full disclosure, Dean Malenko and I are the only remaining members of the Triple Threat. The fact that, I'm sorry, Brian Lee as well. So me, Brian Lee, and Dean Malenko. But the fact that I think when most people say Triple Threat, they think of Shane Douglas and Francine, Chris Candido, and Bam Bam Bigelow. So for that company to take a slap at a group that two of the guys are dead and gone way too early, I think just shows the amount of class that company has. Classless. Maybe we got to start calling them the World Classless Wrestling Federation. Pathetic. Is this what they resort to now that their ratings have dropped to this point? Now, here's a further point. When I was there in 95, 96, I wanted to take shots at other companies for WWF. And Vince told me at that point, we don't do that here, pal. That gives them credence. We stay above that. So apparently the ratings have dropped to the point that the mighty Vince McMahon must now think we've got to start taking shots at deities from the past in our industry, things that are written in stone, so that we can try to get the ratings up. The sad thing is that Vince won't send a paycheck for residuals for what he's doing and invoking that. I think we've already spent too much time on this. But I think the fans, to be honest with you, have. My advice to the fans would be stop watching. Stop paying attention to the garbage. And maybe then they would get back to what our industry is supposed to be, and maybe the ratings might turn around. What were they 10 years ago? What were they 9 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, last year, the year before that, and what will they be next year? You can see the trend. Don't take my word for it. Do your own investigation. And then ask yourself, is there a genius in that company? If so, I'm sure they ain't trying to figure out inventing the light bulb.
See, I think, John and I, and as much as we've been talking about it over the last week, I mean, as fans and as also doing this show with you, it hit home for us because not that you want to say anybody's an enhancement talent and going to talk down about that, because everybody has a role. And these three kids that were playing the role of the triple threat, in 10 years, they could be the three top guys in the business for all we know. You never know. Obviously, Absolutely. You're a great example. You're doing jobs in 1986 for Paul Orndorff and Butch Reed and Harley Race and the Macho Man. And look what you ended up doing in your career. So I don't want to disparage the guys who were playing the role. And I know that's kind of what...
Not at all.
That's kind of what I think a lot of people need to really look at. It's not the guys that were playing it. They were told, go out to the ring. They probably didn't even know they were going to be called the triple threat, for all we know. They probably just went out to the ring and knew they were getting squashed by guys that... Let's look at the crux of it. And Shane, I know you haven't seen the match. And, I was able to see a clip of it. I'm not watching WWE anymore. I'm done. I tapped out. It's not for me anymore. I can't do it. I'm not going to try to sound like I'm holier than thou. It's just not for me anymore. And I like Luke Harper. I'm not a big fan of the other guy, Eric Rowan, but let's talk about an unsafe handicap match. I mean, it was not something that I would hang my hat on. And you're calling these guys a triple threat. I mean, it had a recipe for disaster. But I heard the one line. It said, I'm sure Vince is chuckling it up over thinking it was clever. I'm going to throw it out there and say that a writer probably pitched that to him and that he did have to give it the final say, but I'm sure that somebody thought they were getting cute and throwing the triple threat out there in a disparaging way. Would you agree with that in some way?
Well, whether it was him or them, I mean, my question would be, if it was the writer, I wouldn't hang my hat too heavily on what you've been writing and the ratings you've been getting. Back in the day when I remember the WWF garnering 7s and 8s and high 6s, I wouldn't hang my hat too highly and send out that resume and say, hey, I'm the guy who's been writing for WWE as the ratings are dropping through the floor. This is the company that Vince McMahon has created. Everybody's a yes man. Everybody kiss Vince's ass, literally or figuratively, and if you're not, you're gone. My question is, where is everybody's pride? Has everybody just become so complacent that I'll kiss his ass on television or I'll kiss his ass figuratively here in the back, but just keep kissing ass? Sorry. My lips have been chapped most of my life. I've never been one to put my lips on a nice smooth ass of some other guy or person. Boggles my mind. Boggles my mind that anybody would hang their hat on that. I'm sure Chris Candido's family, I'm sure Bam Bam Bigelow's sons and daughter are very appreciative of that from the genius. But I don't want to give it more credence than it's supposed to get. I mean, obviously not many people have watched it, and my guess is less will be watching next week, next month, next year. I think we've spoken enough about that piece of shit. Let's move on.